Ah.
Put it there anyway, we need it.
Welcome everyone to Town and Community Committee on Tuesday the 19th of November, 6:30 in the council chambers. Just going to read a bit of a preamble on the YouTube disclaimer. This meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Biddulph Town Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community and local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consenting to be recorded and for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sounds may be used for training purposes, and any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Biddulph Town Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy if you need more information. First item on tonight's agenda is apologies and approval of any substitute members. Do you have any apologies?
We have councillors Redfern, Salt and Parks, and there are no substitute members.
Are there any declarations of interest, either disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Item 51, just a non-pecuniary interest in item 51.
The next item on the agenda is the minutes, and to sign the minutes of the Town and Community Committee meeting held on the 15th of October 24.
They've been through Town Council, Chair. I'd move those because.
Okay.
Chair, I think.
Is everyone happy to have been through Town Council? Thanks. Receive the notes of the Biddulph Works Together meeting held on the 23rd of October. Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, if they haven't already, have they got to do town council meetings or not? Yeah, so could I move those, Chair? And could I just say, members have not yet had a chance to look at these. I would advise you to have a look and just see virtually all of the groups have seen an increase in the last few weeks, months, in the number of people that are using their services. And also, I've just had the social prescribers, the connections they are making from the health centre to all of these groups. They are saying this group is really vital for some of the work that they are doing. So just sort of flag it up there that this group really does hit the sweet spot, as it were.
Jackson. So just go through those. We've got present, declarations of interest, apologies, receive the notes of the meeting held in September, updates from members, consideration of future Biddulph Works Together projects, and then the next thing was discussed. We happy to receive those. Thank you very much.
Second.
To note that neither the Health and Wellbeing Working Group nor the Environment and Climate Change Working Group in November were for it. So we don't have anything to pass on from those groups.
One that's got the agenda item.
The next agenda item 49, to agree that actions in relation to the health and wellbeing, environment and climate change will be considered at this committee rather than at working groups.
I think there's just some capacity issues at the moment. I mean, people aren't necessarily able to attend all of those meetings. So I think if there are any pertinent issues, perhaps if everyone agreed, we could bring them directly to this committee.
Yes, I basically agree with Sarah's summary there. I think I am concerned about the environment and climate change group in the context of some very important work being driven by government legislation as much as anything, which is going to impact on, you know, certainly the green spaces of Biddle. And not enough people are turning up to that meeting, which is where basically they presented, you know, one of the things which Richard said at the meeting to the couple of people who were there, as much as we like to, you know, have the three councils operating in isolation, when it comes to things like this, especially when you're reacting to changes in government legislation, you're talking about a Venn diagram. There's definitely an overlap, and it's having that overlap communicated. So we know that, A, we can put our comments and thoughts to it and try and steer it, but B, more importantly, to get an understanding and get it through to our residents as why these things are happening and changing. So, and then if people don't turn up, you run the risk as when you're signing off the minutes and saying, you know, this is what's going to happen. People cry that they haven't been told or they haven't been informed and they've had the opportunity. So I think coming to a meeting like this, which is far better attended with far more quality, does allow us to get those messages and policies across.
Rogers.
In principle, more for it. Just want a bit of clarification, really. If we're doing it on this committee, these other two, health and wellbeing and climate change, have their own chairs. Would they be dissolved into you being the chair, or would we just keep the chairs to those committees?
I think we're basically parking working groups for now, so that we'll come up to the chair of this committee.
Yeah, just clarification, that's all, yeah, thanks.
Else got anything to say about this?
If I can get it, the only comment I make is that, is this likely to expand the agenda for this meeting to cover the key issues that come out of those two working groups in terms of extending the length of this meeting?
I suppose, but there is the potential for that, but we'll just have to spread it out, won't we? Just have to make
So
sure they're not, you know.
As long as we're aware of that, that is
Yeah.
a potential implication of this. So, as Councillor Yates has said, it's important that they're covered and not just left if the working group isn't quorum. So thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, just another quick one on that. We could alternate the months possibly, have one month, another month. Do it bi-monthly.
Thank you. Any other proposal? Second.
Just one caveat on that. I think that's a very good idea from Councillor Rogers. I think we should put them as standard items as an alternative and basically ask the chair who was to see if there's any items which weren't coming up, and then if there isn't anything which is coming up, either through, you know, the town council officers themselves or the chair who's got the finger on the pulse on these things, which you can imagine the same as health and wellbeing, then it's actually, there's nothing, you know, but it is a standard item alternatively on the agenda. So it's not something which actually slips, it forces you to think about it. I think that's a reasonable compromise.
A proposer and a seconder then for,
I'll propose it on the basis of what I've just said.
okay. So on the basis that alternate the months,
Alternate,
the standing agenda item.
standing item on alternate.
A proposer and seconder, is everyone happy with that? So on item 50, we've got to consider the development of a tourism working group as recommended by the Neighbourhood Plan Implementation Working Group.
That's me again.
Yes, I'm first and ever.
Yeah, so there's quite a number of people who sit on the Neighbourhood Plan Implementation Group who've got a there's quite a number of people who sit on that Neighbourhood Plan Implementation Group who've got an interest in tourism and feel that we should have a role in kind of bringing together other organisations in the town who have a kind of tourist hat on. Through District Council have regular meetings with the regeneration officer who's responsible for tourism. But other than kind of feeding the key points through to this committee every now and then, there isn't really a focus of kind of tourist activity. So I don't know whether you want to consider their recommendation about having a working group, which obviously other members other than council members would attend, or whether you want, again, to maybe have another standing agenda item for this committee. Up to you.
Councillor Bradley?
I would have suggested a standing agenda item, because I'm just thinking
we just had a discussion here about 2 working groups, not quorums. Now we're talking about creating another working group.
Yeah.
So, you seem to be odds there. So I start with the agenda item of this committee. Yeah, I hear what Dave's saying, and my initial reaction was we both looked at each other and thought exactly the same. I think there is a slight difference in this, in that neighbourhood plan working group is quite proactive and gets very good membership, both with residents, lay members and councillors, to be honest, and it's very much in the fore with everything which is going on. I think that will continue with the revisiting of the local plan. So I think there is scope to inject energy into that group to give its, now that the part of actually developing the neighbourhood plans job, and it's more a monitoring thing, there is capacity potentially in that group to add something else to it. And this isn't a bad thing to add to it, as long as the recommendations, popular recommendations which come back to this committee. And that could be a standard item on this committee. Are there any recommendations to the neighbourhood plan and tourism for that? And then for councillors to make the decision to take them forward. And I think that would work. I think if it was purely setting up a brand new separate group, not linked to an existing group, then that would be a problem along the lines of Dave said. So
Would your suggestion be that the neighbourhood plan implementation group?
increases their scope and puts recommendations to be considered at this group.
I was going to say, been at that meeting, I don't think there's a desire within the neighbourhood plan working group to take on a different remit. But I think it's important that as a town, we have a forum in which members of the public, as well as councillors, can have an input into the direction of the tourism strategy or developing a tourism strategy for Biddulph. There's quite clearly a lot of work going on regarding the tourism strategy at district, but that historically has been relatively lead-centric, and you can understand why. And I think there's enough within Biddulph, because our reach is different because of the nature of our location in the district, to actually develop our own strategy, looking in the 2 obvious directions of Cheshire East and Stoke in terms of the direction for attracting people into the town. So I think there probably is a justification for a working group, possibly see how it goes in terms of attendance. And if no one turns up, then Councillor Proudlove's proved that, right, we haven't got the motivation to do it. And if there's not the desire to develop a tourism strategy for the town, then there's not a desire to do it. So I would propose that we actually do set up a working group rather than shoehorning it into an existing group where I don't think it's actually desired.
I've got a proposal from Councillor Garvey to say that we set up a working group. Do you have a seconder for that one?
Just before we do, what we're thinking of holding this tourism? Is it monthly or quarterly, or what we're thinking of?
Up to the working group then.
Thinking we put it into this, making the meetings bigger, that's all.
I thought it needs to meet more than quarterly. The agenda
Maybe
doesn't move forward at that rapid a pace, does it? It's yet for the group to determine.
So we've got a proposal and a seconder to set up this working group to look at a tourism strategy and do that work. We're looking at possibly a quarterly. Vote on that, please. Any against? Any against? Any abstentions? You're not on this.
I'm not voting, I'm on the committee.
Not voting, no, I'd like the meeting.
Them?
I'll abstain.
Okay,
I'll abstain as well.
So, if I may, Chair, so to be clear then, we had 3 hands, 3 hands went up in favour? Everybody else abstained? So is that carried?
Hand goes up and everybody else abstains.
Well, yeah, I mean, just for the people watching, just to be clear what happened then, that was all. So we're having a working group.
so that's carried. So quarterly working group, see how that goes.
drop this to someone.
So it might be worth then just saying out loud for the watching public, if anybody's interested, because it'd be open to other members of the public as well. Anybody's interested in joining that working group, contact Town Hall.
Yeah.
Not fair enough.
Something on social media. Yeah.
I know you'll put it on the website. No, but, yeah.
Thank you for that one. So item 51, to agree that the remaining funds from Biddulph Lifeline will be transferred to AED Donate for the purchase of the new defib equipment in Biddulph. So Jones is.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think you let me speak. I'm not on this committee. I asked for this to go on. There's just under £1,000 left in the Lifeline kitting. As you know, all the defibrillators in Biddulph now are being managed by AED Donate. And there have been a couple of issues that have been discovered when they took it over that were missed by Lifeline, me included. Not least was that one of the units quite recently must have been put back incorrectly sat on top of the heater in the box rather than hanging on the hook, and it fried the bottom of the unit. So they've had to replace that, which was an unexpected expense. And they're also taking a programme of replacing all the external boxes because of their age, and some are leaking a little bit, not very much, not enough for us to have been concerned. So they've got quite a bit of unexpected expense. The £980 that we got wasn't all donated by the council, I have to say. We did raise our own funds as well, but the majority of the funding that we had was from Biddulph Town Council, so I thought it was courteous before we handed it over to AED to get the sanction of this committee. So I'm hoping you will support that. Thank you.
Yeah, just a small point, if I may, John. Was any of this money donated from the general public in any way, shape or form? And I say this because I was once part of a group that had a lump of money that was disbanded, and we had to virtually write to everybody that we knew who donated that they're okay with it. That's all I'm bringing it up. Just a technical thing. I hope it doesn't, and I've got no problem with it going to ACL Donate. I think that money should go over there because of the expense they've got.
Well, through the chair then, no, we didn't have any sort of bereavement donations or anything like that. We put on a couple of fundraisers over the sort of 10, 12 years that we did it and raised a few quid. My band did one gig, and there was a couple of other things, but nothing directly from anybody else.
Thank you.
So we've got councillor Jones asking for the £980 that are still held by Lifeline to be transferred to the new maintenance contract with AED Donate for them to purchase the additional things they need. We need a proposer for that.
I propose it.
Councillor Jackson?
I propose it, yeah.
And councillor Garvey. We all happy with that?
Councillors, and just for clarity, Lifeline will be now wound up completely. The bank account will be closed. There will be no more requests for funding from this council from Lifeline. Thank you, Chair.
From the committee, and I'm sure from the town council. Thank you for all the work that Lifeline's done, John.
Yeah.
Not listening. Well, I aren't saying it twice. Okay.
Just a point of information. Councillor Jones, you've just been thanked by the chair.
Oh, thank you. Oh, sorry, it was Councillor Rogers was distracting me. So I apologise.
Very much for all the hard work that Lifeline's put in
Thank you very much.
throughout the
I
years.
was asking a question man to man about that. That was all.
Councillor to councillor, you mean?
I didn't want to put on YouTube. Right.
That's carried then, that the money remaining in Biddulph Lifeline will be transferred to AED Donate. So we move on to item 52, in advance of budget setting to consider priorities of this committee for the next year, 2025-26. So yes.
That's, I think, a good idea to have a list of the headings which we had budget set for last year as a starting point.
Last year. So
We've got all the information that's on the website about the remit.
Councillor Jackson, did you want to Well, Sarah's finding that.
Well, I was just going to say, in light of the financial pressures that the town council may or may not be coming under, are we slightly putting a cart before a horse by, I mean, I've written down the library of things as one of the things that this committee, was keen to do, for instance, amongst all, a whole host of other things that this committee is responsible for. So just thinking about, it's all right having this committee putting forward a priority, if then a finance committee has then got to go through and say, cross against that one, a cross against that one, or a tick again, whatever. I'm just wondering whether we really should be going at it from that other side first to see what budgets are available, and then see what projects might be able to fit into the available funds.
Do you think, though, that if we can prioritise what we think, if things do need to be cut from the scope of what this group does, that if we can prioritise what it is that we want to do and get a bit of an order going, might be useful.
But without that list, as Councillor Yates says, without that actual list about what we're responsible for now, off the top of my head, we've got Biddulph Works together coming under this one. Oh, right, you got it right. Sorry.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I think that rather than actually look at, say, the budget for the different items, is to determine what the priorities are of the areas that we currently cover, in order that, should we get to the point where budgets need to be modified, then we know what our priorities would be in terms of what should have the lion's share of the funding that's available to the committee. So if we have a list, then perhaps the suggestion would be then that list is circulated to all the committee members, and a decision to come forward with ideas directly back to the chief officer if it's not available, sort of to discuss in the meeting now.
Stuff on the screen, so it's not an onerous list, is it? It's not massive.
Interpretation.
See, there's going to be differences of opinion on the priority.
Absolutely, but through the chair, I think the point is that as a committee, we need to agree what our priorities are. It may well be that we universally agree that Biddulph Works Together has to be a high priority because of the needs of the community. It may well be that, for example, the grants process comes through this committee in terms of the allocation of grants is basically with a lower priority because we're effectively giving money away. But we need to have that discussion. So as a committee, we are at least by a majority agreed where our priorities should lie in the scope of the matters we deal with.
I very much take your point, but it's also an item on the agenda, which the agendas are circulated before this meeting goes out.
Yeah.
So I would have expected people to have
Absolutely.
had a bit of pre-thought of what those might be. James.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, I'm to speak. I agree with both Councillor Jackson and Councillor Galvey. I can see where Councillor Jackson's coming from, but as Councillor Galvey says, there's no reason why we can't have a priority, a wish list, if you like. We're not allocating any funds to it. We can just say this is what we'd like to do. Whether the money's available will be decided at finance at some other at another forum. But I think there's no reason why we shouldn't have a list of things we would like to do.
May I say that I feel that in the final analysis, budgetary considerations are the overarching influence over all results of this. And I think there's expectations shouldn't be raised on any priority list that arises because it's subject to the final analysis to budgetary considerations.
I think probably it's worth saying as well that, whilst we've got projects attached to this committee, not all of those projects will have a budgetary implication for the town council. So, for example, we've already spoken in previous meetings about trying to proceed with the library of things, and we will only do that if we can attract grant funding to do it because of the large setup cost. So whilst absolutely there is a budget attached to a number of our activities, Christmas lights and the like, there are projects that we've talked about over the past few months that we'd like to progress that don't necessarily require a precept allocation or funding from the earmarked reserves. Obviously, each councillor representing a different ward will come forward with a project potentially that might affect their ward rather than another one. So obviously the process we go through as regards to budget setting is we give councillors the opportunity to bring anything forward they might want to consider for the following year. We don't meet in December, so that's why it's on the agenda now, so that the discussions can be ongoing as regards finance, and then a budget can be set in January. That's the process that we usually go through. The remit of this committee hasn't changed since 2019. So that's the broad areas that we could consider our work. You might want, for example, to consider other heritage projects which should attract other grant funding. Obviously, you'll have given this some consideration in advance of the meeting so that there's priorities there. I know that Councillor Smith's particularly keen to move forward with the Library Things project, and that's one that we've moved forward with to the point of putting an application in.
I think my perspective is, and with consideration of what other people have said, is that, you know, the core things that we do through this, for example, the key events that we do throughout the year, we absolutely should, you know, support again. It's not something that we're likely to drop doing any of our celebration events that we normally do. Again, markets are really good for the tourism. Christmas lights switch on, we're not likely to take that off our radar. Councillor Jackson.
I was saying, all of those things there have got different pound signs against them, haven't they? Different amounts. You know, for instance, I mean, tourism, you know, for me, for Biddle, tourism is not a massive economic driver. It really, you know, it isn't. It is for Leek, and it is obviously the Cheadle, close to the Thornton Tower, the rest of it. I think, it's been a bee in my bonnet for a long time, that tourism is usually quite low pay, quite seasonal, and quite low skill as well in the majority of cases. So it's difficult, you know, to say, well, all right, if tourism, if we're putting X amount of pounds, thousands of pounds into tourism, or we get what we're getting back as it from a town, what's the quid pro quo for that? Young people, yeah. And obviously something that I think most of us are quite keen about is investing in our young people. But again, how much do we actually put in? Remembrance Sunday, without any shadow of a doubt, it doesn't cost us a lot of money. And people say it's well run. And so we, as a town council, we get a lot of credence and a lot of goodwill from people from that. And, you know, the festival, you know, that does cost us quite a considerable amount of money. Do we need to start looking at sort of that? And that's the sort of discussions that I think we've got to have, but without sort of, you know, knowing exactly what everything's got a pound sign to. I mean, obviously town centre management, and that sort of thing, the market, Artisan Market, there's a cost to that. You know, and I think we have got to look at the financial position we find ourselves in. We need to be looking at these things with, you know, with sharp eyes and perhaps a sharper scalpel. And that is not going to be easy to do. And I'm just not sure whether this is the right forum to do it in. That's all I'm saying. And, you know, and it's difficult. It's very difficult to say, right, you know, mark them 1 to 10. It would be very difficult to do. I mean, there are things on there that, yes, we've got to carry on doing without any shadow of a doubt. There are things we can carry on doing in a slightly different way, perhaps. It doesn't cost the town councillors as much money.
Is it useful to see what we earmarked for this committee last year for the activities within this committee? Is that something you're able to access? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to say is essentially looking at what this committee does, the community aspect of it, in terms of things like Biddlesbrough together, is a classic case. We need to support that, but equally we need to support things that will develop the town in terms of bringing people into Biddles to help revitalise the high street. If we want to develop the town centre, we want to have a thriving town centre, we need to bring people in. And that events do that. So again, should we be prioritising events to bring people in, to try and bring money into the town? So it's really having that discussion as to what we think are the key factors that we should be focusing on as a committee from the fairly broad remit that we've got on that table. And I personally, I would think that with my other hat on from a district perspective, we should be trying to develop our town centre to try and bring people in, to bring tourists in to spend money in the facilities we've got, because we have got a couple of well-renowned tourist attractions, either within the town centre or around the town. The Grange obviously is one that springs to mind, because that is a nationally well-known attraction. And we need to perhaps make the best of that to bring people who visit the Grange into the town centre to basically bring money into the town, rather than people just coming and then going back off to Congleton or going off to Leek. So again, that's something that I think this as a town and community committee should be aspiring to develop and revitalise some of our facilities.
The kind of read of the room that I'm getting is that we're keen to not explore any new projects that have got a pound sign against them. To look at the existing projects that we've got in the pipeline, especially the ones that we're hoping to allocate get some grant funding allocated to, whether it's wherever that pot of funding is coming from, and to maintain the events that we've got at the moment. But once like Councillor Jackson says, once you're talking about the festival, I think we do discuss that. They do discuss that, how much we allocate that in terms of money wise, don't they, in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can discuss individual terms. Councillor Jones, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't think anything on that list that was up there, just for you would want to take off. Every single thing that was on that list, we'd want to carry on supporting. But we're not here tonight, as far as I can see, with respect Article 50 dudes to say let's get a batting order, let's get an order of precedence. They're all our priorities. What we do and how we fund them is, as I say, is for the finance committee, not for us. They're all things that we want to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but on that list, I couldn't see anything that I'd want to take off. I think you're right, Chair. We probably don't want to add anything else new on, given the current financial situation in the country, that we want to, consider spending more public money on. But I think as far as priorities go, what we've got is good enough for now, and let's see how we go.
I think the proviso on that is if it's something that, we do think that we can get grant funding for, if there are particular projects that have started to be explored that we think we can get grant funding from. But I think we need to be quite mindful of committing council funds at the moment, don't we, of our own money. Councillor Yates.
Yeah, it's just marrying what's in the remit of this committee and where it fits in there. In some respects, it could almost do with like putting those 14 categories and saying under each of those 14 categories which one of those lines are, which is a relatively straightforward thing, and it does tie into the remit of this committee. I wasn't referring to that when I said what did we actually spend the money on. It's getting those put into that, so you can see where the categories are. The other thing which worries me a little about new projects is it's very easy to start a new project with a grant, whether it's a direct grant from an outside body or UK Shared Prosperity Fund or whatever. The worry is that the concern is, and we found that in various projects, is the sustainability of it. In years 3, 4, 5, usually year 2, you've got the momentum going over, but 3, 4, 5, and 6. Once you start something, it's very hard to then stop it. And we've got a number of things which we do, which are very expensive, which obviously we want to continue. But if it ever comes to the situation where finances would dictate that we stop it, it's going to be a very, very black day. So, we've got to look at things with eyes wide open for sustainability.
Swaying. We don't really know where are we going from for this one then? What's the steer on this item? Because like Sarah says, we don't discuss it tonight, we don't meet in December, then we're January.
I think the idea of taking on nothing new is good. I think we can get agreement all around the room on that one, that there's no new one. I think there's things like heritage projects, that there's some that are in the pipeline, some that have been grant funded, some of them have been 50% town council costs. I think we need to look at, perhaps again, look at them for the future. Anything coming through on that that's going to perhaps cost us the town council and 50% match funding, for instance, we might have to look at them in a slightly different light. But again, I'm not comfortable that it's in this committee and not the finance that we're sort of going through these things. That's my only thing.
It's an item we discuss every year
Yeah.
before budget setting on this committee for our priorities. That's a priority.
I'm sure I could do.
Just ask a quick question. Neighbourhood plan implementation, obviously I'm not part of the implementation working group, but just in terms of the scope of it.
Right, that tells you something.
Sorry, what's the question?
Scope of the neighbourhood plan implementation group.
Well, there's obviously an agreed terms of reference for that, and the idea behind the implementation group was that decisions would be monitored from a planning perspective, but actually in terms of the non-planning actions and the kind of development centre actions.
Yeah.
That was where that list originally sat. Which is obviously where the recommendation for tourism works come from. Non-planning.
Yeah, as I see it, we're only requesting items to go to finance to be discussed at finance. And we said now the list that's put up there can be sent on to finance. Then costs of that can be discussed at finance. We're not making any decisions this evening, are we? It's just a request being sent to finance, that's all it is.
That's it. We're not putting pound signs against things.
No, it's just
We're saying
request being sent to
projects that
finance.
we feel the most valuable to this committee. So James.
Yeah, I think that's what I said, Chair. I think we're just agreeing a priorities list. We're not allocating any funds. And I think just to wind this up, I think, like you said, stick with what we've got. We will consider anything new that comes along, but very carefully. But I think at the moment, we're not saying we're going to add anything to that list. If that sums it up, Chair.
I'd like to support Councillor Jones's proposal.
Well, I can't make a proposal.
Sorry, I would like to make a proposal therefore along those lines.
Yes.
I like the information which goes to finance. We've got those headlines, those headings within the remit of this group. I'd like to see that as category one, say town centre events, which is down there. And then the itemise what we spent on the town centre events against those cost centres which were put there. So it's bringing those figures together with what this committee does. And that gives a total of what we've done this year. So we've got an understanding when it comes to finance of where that expenditure is going, because we obviously want to support effectively what this committee does at this moment in time. So we just need an understanding in finance. That's what this committee needs. And that's what it's been done. Then the decisions at finance will be based on the validity of that, won't it, as much as anything.
So the information that was on the screen, that's from the
Once
website.
linked to the headlines, remits, what this group is.
Website, that.
Yeah. The finance committee get the full list of income and expenditure. And a Bible.
I don't understand this, Chair. The problem you got with things doing that is some of the most high priority events that we want, like Remembrance Sunday, cost the least. So the priority list doesn't necessarily have to be determined by monetary value. Does it?
I'm not determining it by monetary value. I'm determining it by, assessing
But certainly, I agree, through the chair, yeah, let's get the costs together, and perhaps discuss it in the next meeting. We still have time, won't we? You know? Well, okay.
I think the item on the agenda is to consider priorities.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we know what we do, then it's very simple basically to triage that and say, rank them in terms of what we really need to do, what we want to do, and what it would be nice to do. And that gives you, I mean, as I say, we want to do, we want to do, we don't need to do a remembrance, we really want to do a remembrance one because it's a commemorative event. Things like the festival, it brings people in, you would probably ideally want to do that. But again, we don't need to, but there are some things on there that I think we do need to do in terms of supporting the community. We need to do it. So it's just about triaging that list, and we can do that offline and feed that back in. Because this is essentially about to consider rather than necessarily say, right, these are our priorities, to consider them. We can all go away and consider them and make sure that information comes back to the chief officer before decisions have to be taken. The monetary issues are an entirely separate thing, and that's to be dealt with by finance. We're going to give finance a wish list that says, this is what we want to do. It would be nice if we could do this as well, but these are things we really, really want to do. And if when we consider the cost, when finance consider the cost of those, if there's not enough money to do the things we want to do, then we have to cut it back. If we've got plenty of money, then we consider the things would be nice to do. But this is just about considering what our priorities are. And we can't really, I don't think, decide that here because we're going to be voting on every single one of those items. But we go away, we basically go away, decide what our views are and feed them into the chief officer for her to collate them, and we come out with a prioritisation from that.
I'll have an individual scoring matrix where you.
Yeah, it would be lovely to do that, wouldn't it? But we'll spend all evening doing that.
So through the chair, to sum up, our priorities are the ones we've already got there. Those are our priorities. Well, they are.
Through the chair, the problem is that if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. You have to prioritise things in order to determine what you're going to tackle first, or what you're going to put your limited resources into to do.
What Councillor James is saying, make clear what our priorities are, but not necessarily in the right order.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm
As everybody, Mr. Preppins, getting all the right notes.
exactly right, yeah.
Well,
Chair. Right, brilliant. I wanted to relate to something that Councillor Yates mentioned, and that was about indicating the cost to give people a guide, a bit of a steer when they consider the list. It's just, I mean, bearing in mind what the chief officer said about some of the costs being met by external funding, I think the relevant cost for us to consider is simply that the cost of the town council, net of the external funding.
So to summarise, it is the wish of this committee to not start anything new at this moment in time, but to focus on ongoing projects that we've already got in the pipeline and existing events that we already successfully run.
That's all that's proposed, that piece.
Yeah, we've got a seconder for that.
Second that list, yes.
So Jackson. Can we have a vote, please?
No new priorities.
That's carried. So to move on, item 53, to receive a verbal update on heritage projects.
We've got a photo for you as well, actually. So we were given some grant funding from Moorlands Partnership Board. Obviously, that is one of those 50%. To restore the Overton Road Trough. I am very pleased to tell you, this is one of the longest projects I've been involved in. There we are.
Wow, it's a different colour.
It's exactly the same colour as the stone that's there, only obviously not weathered.
Hang around a few years, he'll blended.
So the stone that's there is that colour. We've asked the planning department whether or not we can, I suppose, jet wash the existing stone, but they're not much for that.
Oh,
That's not the way
Plus the
that's not the
weather.
way conservation works, as I understand it.
Councillor Yates.
two things. I always remember when they created the new entrance to Middle Grange Country Park, the separate entrance to the Grange. And
Yes.
somebody
Done that wall, didn't it?
somebody complained that which incompetent council has used a different colour stonework without actually realising that it does weather over the years. Now, and it has actually blended in now, but it's taken a considerable amount of years. Now, I have read on more than one source where you can get a mix of effectively cow slurry, which you can dilute it, paint onto this brickwork, which accelerates the formation of mosses and lichens.
I thought yogurt, use yogurt.
Well, effectively, it's a bioculture. Yeah, it's a bioculture, but which allows the weathering to actually accelerate, and it soon goes in. It promotes the growth. You're effectively seeding the changes what you're looking for. Because I drove past it today, and yeah, it really was. The fact it stands out as showcases the fact that it's done, and the fact it's done very well. But there are things you can do to actually accelerate the weathering process, so to speak, or the.
Or you could paint it cream, all of it.
The whole cream.
Does this cow slurry have a cost attached to it, or is it something you have personally?
There's a field behind you. Get a bucket.
And have we got a volunteer to do this?
I think things naturally age and weather, don't they?
Nigel knows about naturally aging.
Yeah, just looking apart, it's well done to get that. It's been locked up.
Exactly.
Again, congratulations to everybody involved, because I think I've got dark hair when this started.
Well, I think it's one of the first ones I did, I think. So anyway, yes.
You get there in the end.
Well, the process now then is to claim the money back from Moorlands Partnership Board. And then there are no outstanding Moorlands Partnership Board projects for town council. So that's potential.
Hilvis, wherever she is, will be very pleased to see that done.
Only last evening at the History Society, I was approached by, or in discussion with a chap who said, when I mentioned it, oh, went past it the other day, noticed it, caught my eye at 40 miles an hour. He said, and he then followed it up with a question. Very good, he says, who's paid for it? Now, it's that last bit that, sobered me a bit. Who's paid for it? Well, I don't think I gave him quite the right answer if you what I said a few minutes ago, but be that as it may. If it's visible, it's also in people's mind, this is something that the town council has achieved. If it's weathered too quickly, it's forgotten too quickly. And I think it's no bad thing to have these conspicuous examples of the town council's achievement. And for that reason, I'd be a bit reluctant to hasten its weather.
I agree.
Fancy cow story was.
Just trying to find use for all that time we had. Yeah.
So in terms of progressing with other heritage projects or completing other heritage projects, we still we're kind of looking at the words for the interpretation panel down at Station Road for the mosaic bench. So the cost for that's been approved already, but we'll bring a proof to you for some of the words that will be included within that board. And then as regards the St John's roundabout with the mining lanterns, we still need to do some kind of tree management and some planting there. But the aim at the moment is, because of the town hall frontage will require the removal of the roses that are in there at the moment, that actually it might be quite nice to relocate those to St John's Road roundabout. So, and the Biddulph and Bloom team are happy to support us with that. So that'll be tree work will require some funding, but the rest of it will just get done.
Councillor Jackson.
So as far as funding is all concerned, that's all gone through those three projects that you've mentioned. What about Biddulph Station one? Is that progressing any further than?
we haven't moved forward with that. You mean an interpretation panel for that one? Or a more?
Well, I thought that's
benches or?
I know we got some bricks. We got some bricks back and that. I have not been up there. I'm assuming they've been put in, but I think there was some talk about a wagon going in there as a, a mining heritage thing. As I'm not proposing we do by any stretch, not at this moment in time. But I'm just wondering, is that now complete apart from the interpretation board? There's no other expense envisaged with that one.
So the bullnose bricks went in, so that element's done, and that was that part of the Moorlands Partnership Board grant. I think we envisaged there'd probably be 2 or 3 phases of that. Excuse me. We just haven't worked that out yet. It can happen whenever we're ready for it to happen. And we talked about having a railway bench signage that sent people into town centre, and a railway, a sort of welcome to Biddulph town outside. It's the sort of things we talked about.
So would they be classed as ongoing heritage?
We haven't.
Or new?
There'd be new projects.
They're new projects. Bearing in mind what we sort of just said,
Exactly.
That will be put on hold.
Whenever we're.
That's what, a long way around to get into where I want to
No,
be.
when we're ready to work that up, we
Yeah.
can do that. But at the moment, we've fulfilled all our obligations through
Right,
our
okay.
We've obviously got ideas about things that we could do going forward, but as things stand at the moment, that's done. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, on the miners' lamps, I've kept away from that's not my ward, and I would defer to ward councillors. But it seems to me that the tallest thing on that roundabout should be the miners' lamps. And the idea of reusing these roads is, I think, is an excellent one.
I think some of the vegetation needs cutting back on there.
Big time.
Yeah.
Councillor Yates and Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, just picking up on the platform at the Bit Valley Way down at Gallagher's. The bricks are weathered in quite nicely. They were actually that's a bit ugly, some of the pointing when it was first done, but they've actually weathered in quite nicely, so it looks quite good. Are we responsible for the maintenance of the fence there? Because part of it is broken, right? I'll report that to staff tomorrow.
Rogers.
Just 2 very quick things on them bullnose bricks on the platform. There's a few tucked away. We know where they are for future use. And just a very quick one on the miners' lamps. Are we still having like an unveiling day, or what's happening?
We were going to talk to you about that in the events section.
Okay, thanks.
So moving on to that event section, item 54, to receive a verbal update on 2024-25 events. That's a Jodie and Sarah special.
Just before I start, given what you just said about nothing new, where I've put some new events ideas in, am I talking about that, or do you not want me to talk about them now? Am I just into original, our existing events, or do you want to know about new things?
Again, not knowing what the new things are or might be and what potential costs might be, then it's difficult, isn't it?
Should we just go through it and then you can, decide what you want to?
Yeah, okay. So potentially there are 2 new Northern Soul dates in the town hall. That's relatively little cost to us. In terms of, we don't get a room hire from that, but the funds go to the mayor's charities, whoever the mayor is at the time. They brought a lot of people into the town and were really very much appreciated last time that was done. So there are a couple of dates knocking around for them. We're proposing to carry on with our Feast and Flicks offering. So that's done on a kind of monthly 6-weekly basis, where we have a kind of a community cinema showing. We provide some food. That's part of our Biddulph Works Together offer. We let the group choose what film they want to watch, and it's expanded again now that we've kind of reopened that, now that the cold weather has started. We've obviously received some funding previously for Biddle Scratch. For Biddle Scratch, so that's our cinema offering on the first Friday of every month. And we've got some half-term showings of films there. We made some arrangements for Chinese New Year in January. So with a little bit of the funding that's left from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, we can have quite a nice, that's a new event in the middle of January when we don't normally have much going on events-wise. So that's that's a different offering for the town. We have had some ideas about a mining event. We've talked within our office about the logistics of having a kind of opening of the lanterns and how you would manage to do that on the roundabout, next to the roundabout. How do you keep people safe? Do you provide drinks and refreshments, and where do you do that? You know, what to make that look like? We wondered whether, with the town hall frontage work being imminent and that obviously being a focus with that project and mining, whether it might be nice to have essentially a day when the town hall frontage work is done, where we dedicate that day to Biddle's heritage and the mining within the town. So we could have kind of opening of the frontage, lots of pictures reference to the mining lanterns themselves. We have an exhibition inside, potentially music. We wondered about doing, we talked about this in various different areas before, kind of voices, we call that voices. So people kind of talking about their experiences and recording that. We wondered about having a kind of wider celebration of both those mining projects and the heritage as a whole. Obviously, that's absolutely open to you know, your feedback, your input. We also thought with the town hall frontage work being complete potentially as the weather starts to get nicer. It's all a bit up in the air when the weather does start to get nicer, but we wondered, there's been an interest in the town for a little while about car boot offers. We wondered whether a town centre car boot offer might be a nice idea. Relatively little work in terms of getting that and the kind of ongoing management throughout the day, other than getting people in now for that. We've got VE Day in May, so we've there's a whole, as you can imagine, there's a whole variety of things that should be done on VE days. You know, there's a town cry, we're supposed to light the lamp of peace, you know, all those kind of activities. Last year we had a very successful event with the Roadhall Silver Band and the Male Voice Choir and the Kingsville Singers. That was a really nice event, so we wondered about doing something similar for that. We supported our church community. I mean, they organised it all with a prayer breakfast this year. That went down really well and was appreciated by our community. Obviously, lots of activities in the town and lots of work that's done in the town is done by our churches, so it's nice to recognise their hard work. Obviously, Festival Launch Day and the car show are two big events for us. We've talked previously as well about potentially having a horticulture show in September. So obviously we've got allotment holders who might want to grow the biggest marrow. The WI are quite keen to judge each other's scones. That sort of activity might promote the branding of the garden town of Staffordshire. That would be quite a positive event. We're not proposing to do another garden festival this year. Obviously that came this year with the funding from the Shared Prosperity Fund. So it'd be nice to do something that recognised gardening and growing within the town. We've mentioned before as well that the group that we're discussing kind of an art forum had spoken about missing or having very fond memories of the music festival that used to exist within the town, and that used to be held up at the high school and was very well respected amongst lots and lots of groups far and wide who used to come and compete in that. There's a lady who's approached us who would be really interested in kind of organising that with us and on our behalf. So we've talked about whether or not grant funding might be available to support her to do that. Just you can talk.
Yeah.
Carry on. We've wondered about doing some. Oh dear. Wondered about doing something, a kind of spooky Saturday kind of event around Halloween. This year, obviously, the Civic Awards and volunteer recognition event was really well received by our voluntary community sector partners. Nature.
As an environmental
Yeah.
sort of event, we were discussing about sort of nurturing nature event where we could discuss green spaces, the importance of pollinators, wildlife, a tree trail, things like that, probably down at the country park, talk about things in the town. You know, something for the children, something for adults, basically to promote well environmental work and tree planting. That.
Yep, remembrance, Christmas lights, they're the usual things that we do, and we thought we'd try and get some business breakfasts in next year as well. That's a kind of long list of things that we're looking at working up for next year. It is a long list, it's a busy list. There will be some funding attached to that.
I've got Councillor Yates, Councillor Rogers, Councillor Jones.
Yes, I was just wondering, with regards to, making sure we linked in with outside, you know, with a lot of these things, they've certainly supported, because they've got an awful lot of money swishing around, and they are aware of, you know, making sure they do projects in middle. That's a key thing, especially for anything new and anything which has got a little bit of razzmatazz to it. They've got a lot resource there which they need to use.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I like a lot of these ideas, all for them. Just one I've thought about many a time is the car boot idea. Sainsbury's allow their car park to be used for car boot on a Sunday morning. And I've thought many a time about the far end of the Undercroft car park and make a fantastic car boot all season. Because car boots tend to start early, finish early. So it wouldn't really affect the store, but you'd have an undercover car boot. And I think if they play ball, which they've done with a leak, not saying they wouldn't do it, because they're going to leak, we could have the last couple of miles on the Undercroft car park. No matter what the weather is, you've got a fantastic undercover car boot there, which would ultimately bring trade into the town and their store.
It's accessible through the gate.
I think when we were talking about new events as well, car boot, I'm presuming we'd be charging for the pitches.
Yeah.
So it would be sustainable in terms of it would pay for itself. So that's different in terms of it being a new event. Yes. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I haven't just said we're not going to do anything new. A lot of this sounds good stuff. And most of it, I think, is probably quite a low cost. And a good portion of it is self-funding, is it not? So I think, you know, we should just, I think tonight, just encourage officers to carry on with the preparatory work and put some costs together for doing it. And encourage them to carry on. Thank you.
Yeah, just getting back to Councillor Yates's point about outside arts. The outside were very good. I know in Weekend Cheadle in terms of taking local ideas and working with local partners in terms of developing it. As I said, they do have resources. So I would like to see more of that resource spent in Biddulph, to be quite honest, rather than with our cousins over the hills.
Might be something for the new year. Thing that you've put there, the Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
that might be a
they're
really
already
good.
involved.
Oh, okay. They're already involved with the Chinese New Year. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, on the miners lab, so I was hopeful it would be a ribbon cutting affair on its own. I'm not passionate about it. If we want to do it later in the year when that opens, then I'm open to that as well. But I think it should be something up there, should be sort of in the evening when it's actually lit. Which, you know, the closer to sort of January, February would be more, you know, better for that sort of thing. And I sort of envisaged, along with other members, that we actually sort of march up to the Barley Mow being the closest hostelry to it. And I'm certain the Labour group, or Middle Branch Labour Party, certainly put on some food. You know, liaise with Maggie and you know, the Labour group would pay some food, so that's not going to come anything on the town council. But I would like, you know, have a little bit of a think about exactly when. I mean, if we're finishing this in sort of March, end of March, hopefully, yeah, April. You know, it's getting lighter nights then, and I do think a lot of people have seen the lamps, but not necessarily everybody's seen them actually lit. You know, because of the vegetation that's around them, it does sort of get in the way of it a little bit. I just wondered whether you could think about having a separate one, an opening on its own. And like I say, we'll certainly get some miners' banners down there. I take on board what you said about the safety aspects, but there are pavements all the way around it, not necessarily on the roundabout itself, but on the way around. And I'm sure we could get some miners' banners down there as well. Got some contacts that could sort that sort of side of it out. So just give it a little bit of thought. I'm thinking perhaps sometime in February would be perhaps ideal. I was originally hoping this side Christmas, but it's obviously a bit too late for that now. But perhaps pick a date, Friday perhaps in February, and we'll liaise with the landlady at the Barley Mow, and put a bit of a sandwich and make a bit of a do of it. Because, like I say, I think there's been like one negative comment on them lamps. Then 99.9%, everybody's been dead positive about it. So I think it perhaps does need a bit of a celebration to actually, officially open.
Some real enthusiasm from a lot of the residents on that state as well. So I think it's important to.
And hopefully you could get a bit of a crowd there.
Okay, I'm going to support Councillor Jackson's proposal there, but in terms of, we organise Christmas light switch ons, have road closures for that. There's nothing to stop us doing a road closure on that roundabout. There are enough ways to get around it. Wouldn't inconvenience people for a temporary road closure for an hour in order to have like a Christmas light switch on, basically a mining lamp switch on.
The road closure costs there.
Is that?
That's four.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about an evening rather than during peak rush hour, and particularly if you have it later, then you can have done most of the landscaping work in terms of moving the roads and all that work can be done. So you can effectively have your finished article as an evening event. Just a suggestion, that was all. In terms of, but I think from a safety point of view, you would need to have the roads closed if you're going to have people milling around that area.
Councillor Proudlove and then Councillor Jones.
No, I just, to be honest, like to reinforce what Councillor Jackson said. I'm just wondering in terms of timing, do we want to go in towards the date, the end of the miners' strike? March.
I think that the 10th or the 11th of March was the start of it, but I didn't particularly, sorry, Chair, I didn't particularly want to open some old wounds there, you know, so I think we perhaps might stay away from that one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just, Councillor Rogers is too shy to put his hand up, so I'm just going to tell you what he said to me, and it's a good idea. I mean, you wouldn't have to shut the whole roundabout, would you? You could leave Princess Street and St John's Road open and just close, yeah, is it Lord Street that way? I can't remember.
You have Lord Street access round then.
Yeah, so you know, as long as you've got a safe path, you'll be all right. Yeah, that'll probably be less traumatic. I think shutting all four roads would be a little bit disruptive. But that's an option. It's a good option. So it can be done. As Councillor Goff said, it can be done.
We investigate the possibilities into that, Sarah, and just come back with a feasibility thing.
It's 12 weeks notice.
Then if it would be possible, could we go for a date? Tonight?
So 12 weeks for a road closure.
12 weeks for road closure, so you're not.
Which would be end of then, sort of. sorted.
I want the weather to be a bit better. It's not the end of February.
It's now at the end of November.
The roads automatically closed.
So can we put some sort of feasibility and costs? And look for towards the beginning of March, because that fits in with the 12-week road closure, doesn't it? Would have to be pretty quick at something else. Anyone got anything else to note on the events, Councillor Lawton?
May I just say a little thing about the roundabout, the closure? I've been sitting here trying to see an easy way in which you close half a roundabout, and at the moment having difficulty. All I would say is please let it be thought out a little bit more.
Roundabout turns into a
So that concludes the public portion of this meeting. Next that we're going to discuss, we'll discuss in confidential and in accordance with the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960, Section 1. The council is to determine which items, if any, should be taken with the public excluded. So thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, that's the end of the meeting.